Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can download them at ArtistFirst.com. And now, here's your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. That was a dramatic opening. I felt like we were more important than we are. But thank you. That was awesome. And I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
Margaret, and she is awesome. And tonight's show is awesome, too, because tonight we are talking about soul. We're going to talk about Risa, James Brown, Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye is his younger, lesser-known brother. And all those other soul artists. No, we're not going to talk about any of those things, although that would be fun. But we are going to talk about soul. And actually, we're going to talk about spirit and soul, or spirit sort of versus soul. And I think you are best suited to expound on these things, because I always get this wrong, and I think a lot of people do.
Well, it's very confusing, because I know for myself, I never had separated the two words before. I always had to lump them together, thinking that soul and spirit were interchangeable. But after Chris, it really sank in that there is a sharp distinction between the two. Soul is always defined as how you think, how you feel, and how you choose. And those are aspects of you that you do. Think, you feel, and you choose. All active. But spirit is the part that is your being. And I say that because we've discussed being versus doing often. But the being state, which is a more true state for a human. And with the kids growing up, I had always said to them, you are considered fully human when you have put together your body, your soul, and your mind. And soul and spirit were interchangeable, as I said before, but now I realize that it's body, soul, and spirit. And what I mean by that is that you as a human being, I mean, let's face it, kids in general, they're mostly concerned about body stuff. You know, I'm hungry.
Right.
I got to go and I want to play.
Right.
But then they begin to develop aspects of their soul, which is you're teaching them how to think and what they're feeling. What are these emotions that you're feeling? You're angry all of a sudden. Yes, we call this anger. Or you're disappointed. Or you're sad. Or you're happy. Helping them work their way through all of this. And then choosing. The ability to use your will to a purpose. And actively choosing as opposed to a default. So that molds together. But what happens is that many times it sort of goes into this default mode of always trying to figure out, well, what is good for me? You know, this is, you can hear it in conversations between parent and child. You know, do you like this or don't you like this? And whether you like it or not is the guiding factor on how you make your decision. when you realize that that like aspect is actually your soul speaking, it's intensifying, or in what would be the word? What you're culturing is more of a soul response as opposed to spirit response.
Mm.
Spirit understands that you are more than what you're feeling or thinking or choosing. If you don't understand that sometimes you choose wrong, and you go into that cycle of, well, gee, I did bad, so I chose bad, so I am bad. It's like, no, all that's got to get flushed out.
Mm.
But that habit form of always going back to that default position of whether I like it or not. And that's how most people make decisions. So what I found fascinating, and I was thinking about this, is that people have a tendency to say, oh, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And if you ask them what that really means, it's not really defined. They are not talking specifically about a way of living or a philosophy even. It's just, well, no, I'm not into all that religious stuff. Like, okay, what is religious stuff then for you? I need to understand. But spiritual winds up being what I think feels good for me. Not necessarily this is what is good for my soul, even though my soul may not like it.
I like a lot of what you said there, because there's an interesting aspect of soul, which is the soul is the part of you which chooses. Therefore, the soul, this is a word which is charged, but I'm going to say it anyway. The soul is concerned with morality. Now, morality has been turned into sort of what you should do and what you shouldn't do, the rules. That's an aspect. That's a consequence of morality. But morality, the actual word, means to choose between one thing and another, and to use as your choice mechanism a overarching sort of an external set of comparisons, if you will. Morality can mean what is good versus what is bad. People often define morality in the good and the bad. And the soul is very concerned with choosing. And when you choose, you generally try to choose between something which you believe will be good versus something you believe will not be good. And again, emotion comes in, choice comes in, will comes in. I would also say what's very interesting about what you said is that soul has fleshy aspects, body aspects. It inhabits the body. You know, there's that wonderful saying. You know, you're not a body. You are a spirit that has a soul and a body. You know, you're the aspects of everything that you are, the vastness of you, has been, let's say, enveloped in the temporal, and its extension into the temporal is the physical. And yet you maintain the connection all the way back to the spirit, to the eternal. So you have the eternal, you have the soul, which is sort of loosely the interface, and then you have the temporal and the fleshy bits of you. But that part of you that chooses is always concerned with morality. And you mentioned one. There's this morality of, well, if it's good for me, you know, that is a type of morality. It's sort of a I am the only thing in existence, so if it's good for me, I don't care about anybody else. And that's the morality of the sociopath. You know, someone who makes the rules based on their own individual feelings. It's not a great morality, but the soul is. It's very much concerned with choosing, and then once you start choosing, you have the choosing of what is, well, good, bad, what is right, what is wrong, and we've developed from that, in interactions with each other in relationship. Because the other thing you didn't mention about the soul, but I think I would say, maybe you can correct me, that the soul is where relationship happens in the temporal. It's soul to soul.
Right. It's your personal responses in that respect. But again, I go back to, you are not fully human unless spirit is totally incorporated into you. And what that means, because most, again, people say, well, isn't my soul and my spirit the same? It's like, no. What is the difference between soul and spirit? And the spirit aspect is that eternal part that links back into that which does not change and that which does not die. And it's life force itself. But there is a consciousness to it. Because people, okay, consciousness, isn't that a soul thing? It's an aspect of it. Your consciousness is broader than just your soul. And this is why I'm saying, when people say, oh, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, what they're actually doing is saying I'm soulish. I'm not spiritual.
I like the consciousness aspect of it, because you remind me of Tolle, and the way he breaks up the phases of existence. You have the emotional body phases, where there's truly a visceral reaction to circumstance. And I think if you get people back away from that, you get into the soulish aspects where people are now saying, well, I decide that this is okay, or this is bad. You have this sort of arbiter of what is good and bad, and still that's where you tell yourself the stories. You have the things that happen to you on the physical plane, and then you have these stories that you tell, the emotional stories, the moral stories, that he did this to me and they always do that to me stories, and that's all in the soul plane.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tolle talks about consciousness, which is above that, which is what the soul and the body exist in, and is necessary for them to exist. And this is touching back to spirit. And what he talks about is the eternal, in the sense of the now. The now is eternal because it's always now. It's never not now. It's always now. And that eternal and the consciousness there is where you, if even it's beyond the concept of you, it's beyond the individual, but it is the consciousness. It is what observes, what's there when you strip everything else away, because there is something still there.
And that's the interesting part. Most people don't believe it.
Okay,
they just, oh no, it's got to be what I feel. I feel that this is wrong. And you sit here and you go, well, where is that coming from? Is that a mental construct that you've put together? Is it an emotional response to something you've seen or heard or felt? Where is that coming from? Because when it comes from your spirit, and that's the main difference between soul and spirit, when it comes from your spirit, there is a purity of heart to it. The underlying state observes without judgment. Soul likes to judge.
I'd say there's the interesting thing about it is the I comes in when you talk about soul. Souls talk in I terms. That you did this, I did that. That's a soul term. And souls also divide things. They tear things into tinier and tinier pieces, because that's important to the soul. The soul wants to identify. It wants to, as you say, judge. It wants to discern. It wants to interact at the thinking level, and interact at the feeling level, and interact at the decision level, and all these things are soulish things. And yet the spirit resides, and the spirit is there. And if you pull yourself up and totally, into the now, and you realize that the consciousness is always there, even in the moments when nothing, even if nothing else is going on in your mind, you're still there. You is the thing that's behind it all.
Right.
And that's when you start to touch into the spirit. You say, well, when I strip everything away, the body, and I strip away the soul and the mind and the judgments and everything, there's still something there that exists and observes and doesn't require any of the other things to be.
Right.
And you reach being and nowing, and then you're in spirit. So there is a very distinct layer, because soul can't exist without spirit. Body is just inanimate matter without the soul. But the hierarchy is so incredibly important. And then the reaching, the Buddhists say nirvana, is reaching to the being that is behind it all.
Well, reaching to clarity of understanding who you are is where the steps are you're drawn to, the steps that you need to take. And it's, as I said, it's non-judgmental. And it's very interesting, because to begin to separate your responses, because first of all, you got to catch yourself in having a response.
Mm.
So, are you being emotional about this or that or the other thing? And not to draw a judgment from it, because the minute you find out that you're doing it, you want to make a judgment. Go, oh, I fell for that again. I'm doing like, no.
Right.
You have to understand that this is you fighting with you. Your soul doesn't fight with spirit. I don't think people understand that. You, your soul aspects, fight amongst themselves.
Yes.
Which pretty much tears you apart.
Yes. Well, exactly that. When the voice that talks to you inside your head it isn't a separate thing, unless you're crazy. No, it isn't a separate thing, because you yourself tear your individual soul into little bits that talk and argue and comment and opine and discuss and think about the future and the past. And we very easily, because human beings, this is one thing that separates us perhaps from animals, and maybe not the thing that makes us superior, but just different, is that we are able to excise ourselves and observe ourselves and judge ourselves and talk to ourselves and divide ourselves into many, many little pieces, all of which have a wonderful little argument with each other that nobody else can hear, yet we think they can. We really think that he really knows what I'm thinking. He was like, no, nobody knows what you're thinking except you, but you make a lot of judgments. We all do this based on what you think the other person is thinking about you, which is like, wow.
But you see, that's where all the conflict actually arises.
Yes.
Because if you are conflicted with your own soul,
Yes.
your soul is fighting with itself, those arguments manifest themselves outside.
Mm.
And you want to, what do they call that, project it onto another person. But actually, it's you fighting with you. And until you can get to the point where you recognize this, you basically will feel that it's everybody else's fault, and it's certainly not mine.
What does Tolle say? I'm right. And this is the basis of so much conflict, is the tearing of a part of self into parts of you that are right and parts of you that aren't right, and the judgment of who is right.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was right and yet I didn't get what I want, then that's an offense, a slight, and it's the amazing thing of the mind, because the mind loves this too. The amazing complexity is it can juggle it all, can keep all these stories going, 15, 20, 100 stories about who did what to who and when it happened, and it's all all in a silent symphony inside your head that nobody else can hear but you.
Mhm.
And it can literally drive you crazy.
Yes. You can tear yourself into shreds.
Or even just waste a lot of energy and a lot of your life. A lot of your precious time can be wasted basically talking to yourself.
Oh my. And isn't that what we're seeing? Most people who are carrying anger, and you've seen it, they carry, there's just the angry man that everybody knows, or the what would be the term? The witchy woman that everybody knows. That is just an internal argument that's going on continually, where all you see is this immediate reaction to whatever happens to be appearing on the horizon in their life. They see something and they interpret it into, well, see, I'm angry, so that's always been, and you guys are this, that, the other. There's all these names that come up, and titles, and scenarios getting played out again, saying, see, I'm right, nobody can be trusted. I'm angry, so I'm going to be witchy to everybody. Because, and you sit there and you're like, okay, this has nothing to do with me. I just happen to be here watching you.
Well, and the interesting thing about all this is it all requires your own personal energy to be invested. And we often we have talked in the past about shards. People leave pieces of themselves, both pieces which are being kept alive through sapping your current living energy. The current living energy of you is being sapped into these pieces of yourself, which are grudges or anger or judgment or so many other things that can just, you have to keep them alive and keep them going and feed them. They really need to be fed, and they demand to be fed. And then there's the pieces, again, we tear ourselves into pieces. The pieces we leave in the past offenses, the unforgiveness, and then these terrible things that we do to ourselves. Worry, it totally talks all about worry, about how people live in constant projection and fear about the future, and that everything, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and then what will I do? And so there's this tremendous amount of energy which is spent on the unknowable and unforeseeable future, and there's a tremendous amount of energy which is left in the immutable and unchangeable past. And if that isn't bad enough, you tear your current present, the thing which is living and trying to live, into tiny pieces based on reactions which are colored by these other voices. So there's a terrible cacophony which we unfortunately build ourselves. We build ourselves a Greek chorus or a full opera's worth of voices from our past and voices we've made up ourselves and things that we feel that we need, yet they all steal from the now. Mm-hmm. And as you said, there's the aspect of us, the consciousness, the part which is eternal, the part which actually lives every moment of every instant of every day. And it's quiet and it's beset, but it's also indestructible, and it's always there. Mm-hmm. And totally gives us an idea of how to get there. There are many other ways to get there. Part of it is Eckerman has this too, this actively stopping the voices and saying, I'm doing it again. And then you say, you judge yourself for doing it, but I'm projecting. I'm letting all of these things, either in the past or the future, or the voices of the now, steal from the actual thing. Go ahead.
And that does not, you cannot change that
No.
unless you come into communion with your spirit, with spirit, your spirit with the wider, vaster spirit, because you need an intervention.
You do need an intervention.
You need an intervention, because what happens is when you're going down that well-worn path of thought and you're redoing the same thing over and over and over again, you need divine intervention to be able to do it. And the doorway to it is through your own spirit, to something far greater than who you happen to be right now. And in order to do that, you must acknowledge that that exists, because if it doesn't exist, then you won't embrace it. What I thought was fascinating was in neuroscience now, what they're finding is any kind of thought patterns that you happen to set up create these. The patterns are interesting because what it is almost like, it looks like lightning strikes in your head, where the thought goes across and the lightning movement travels from one point to another. When you're worried about something, or when you're thinking of something that is so low energy, those connections actually don't fire up. They make these very dense, how do I say this? The brain doesn't light up as much as when you're having higher thoughts, lighter thoughts, positive thoughts. The negativity actually manifests in your brain with these like heavy patterns. And those patterns have got to get broken or redone. And the only way to do it, the way that I've heard it spoken about, is that there's like these tree patterns that get formed in your head. And some trees are alive and some trees are not. And if the tree that is negative is not brought out into the open, it's like taking that tree and you've shoved it in a dark corner somewhere so you can't ever see it, but it's still there. And it's dulling that area of your brain. You have to be able to acknowledge the fact that that thought pattern is there, and you've got to take it out of the darkness and put it on the table into the light. Say, okay, I see this. And that's the only time you're going to be able to take that apart and redo it into a healthier thought pattern. You've got to acknowledge the fact that you've been having those negative thoughts. Otherwise, they will continue to darken your brain.
Yes, I mean, there's physiological effects of these types of soul judgment or multiple voice type of, or negativity. And we talk about, there are very well documented both fMRI studies, which are ways to see the actual patterns inside the brain, as well as just plain old psychoanalytical studies where people experience trauma or they experience stress, and this stress becomes a buried and toxic, or sometimes let's say a darkened part of the actual brain. And if we had the ability to do it physically, where we could erase these things, neuron by neuron, perhaps we could do it with some sort of a very incredible surgery. But in fact, the only way to do it without hurting yourself is to examine, and that can be done both through your own self-examination of these thoughts and comparing them to actual reality, to the actual now, or through the help of a therapist who does the same thing. What do? They explore the traumatized areas. They bring them, as you said, out into the light. And we're going a little bit far afield, but in fact, these areas of trauma are all creations of the soul and the mind, and they both have physical effects that can be measured and seen. With our current diagnostic techniques, we can see them, and they manifest themselves in a sapping of your life energy. We are living beings. We require energy. We deal in energy. All of what we do down here is in the energetic. It's both in the temporal and in the energetic. The ability to examine is a very powerful tool. And so let's take a little break, and you do some self-examination. We're going to have a commercial break, and during that time I want you to identify everything that's wrong with you, and we'll talk about it on the other side of the break. So we'll take a little break.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Taking God on Patrol is a first-person account of the world of law enforcement from the perspective of a Christian police officer in the 4th largest city in America. From speeding car chases to the crossing of the thin blue line, author Mark S. Cariner seeks to find God's biblical truth in a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement. And check out Mark's newest book, The Tactical Heart. Both are available at Amazon.com.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is Book 1 of the Adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, please send it to us at dj@artistfirst.com. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you, Z-Man. And now there will be a post office box where you can send your troubles and traumas, and we will look at them later. Now, welcome back to The Soul of the Everyman, the second half of the bottom half of the top hour of the top of the bottom of the half hour. And I'm getting the look now. But we're talking tonight about the difference between soul and spirit, and it's interesting because they do often get confused. But I think our postulate, and I think it is correct, is that we all of us have these aspects. Okay, if you like the eternal entities that we are in these states at different points in our eternal existence. There's a much larger part of your existence in which you are in spirit, but in spirit, in the now, in that ever-present state, we don't develop. We just are. We be. Here we come to dream the common dream. We come to have relationship. We have those relationships on the physical, temporal, and soul level. And we've been talking a lot about how the soul tears itself into pieces. We all do that. But we also should talk about how the soul is essential to forming relationships here. And through relationship, you can start to also find ways to quiet the aspects of the soul which are sapping from the now. You know, relationship is another tool. We talked about self-examination, but you can examine each other, which is a lot more fun than it sounds. But no, you can. You through relationship, through our friendships, through our dialogue with others, through our intimate relationships with others, we get a insight into our being, into our consciousness, into the part of us which is eternal, as well as insight into the parts of our souls which we've messed up, or we aren't able to see within ourselves what is causing the issue, or the trouble, or the lack of energy. But another can help us. We are able to see in our own, in others, that which they can't easily see themselves. You know, we can help each other.
Right. Relationship is something that we are meant to experience down here. And the soul is part of that interaction and that learning process. Relationship is the main experience that leads us into the expansion of consciousness, because you begin to identify what it means to be in a relationship where someone is actually caring and loving you, and relationships where that does not exist. I think that's probably one of the first things you learn, is knowing who actually loves you and what that means. Because when love is involved, the heart is speaking, and the heart knows when things are true or not. And that's when you really begin to try to figure out, well, what am I feeling? Is this real? I can't tell you how many people have asked me, how do I know when love is real?
Yes.
And I just smile. I was like, listen, if you're asking, then it's not love.
Mm.
When it's love, it's undeniable. And it's much more than just lust, people, okay? Or needing something because you need to feel validated. Right? Those are all soul responses. And what is it that phrase is nowadays? It's like, I'm looking for my soulmate. And what you're doing at that point is, you're looking for someone with whom you can have a relationship. That's really what you're looking for. But you need to be able to be brought together in spirit form. Your spirit with the other person's spirit. Because with that, and you find the unity through spirit, and the soul comes along. And you could be so completely opposite, it doesn't matter. And that's probably the baseline of that saying that opposites attract. If the relationship is at a core level, spirit to spirit, and it is based in this unconditional love, then the soul aspects, the responses, the thoughts, the choices, all fall in line with the spirit part of you, which is being in the now.
I think the other aspect that you talked about was there's discernment here. In relationship, there is a exchange of energy between two souls, two bodies in the temporal, and that's all incredibly important. That's how the bonds are made. It's exchange of energy, and to the extent that energy is exchanged, the bond becomes greater. But part of that exchange of energy is an examination of the other, of finding these resonances of the heart. And you mentioned the heart. The heart sees true. Using the heart is our organ of discernment. It is not. It is also something that pumps blood in your body. But we're talking about the aspect of the soul, which is the heart. The heart is the soul's way of discerning that something has spirit, that it has life, that it is true, and it operates on the temporal plane. But it is not baffled the way the mind is. It doesn't spin into all the I stuff. It sees being. It is the part of the soul which is closest to being. Through the heart, you can reach spirit. And using the heart in the temporal, you can discern and see what relationships are true, what relationships feed, how the energy flows. And you build relationships through the eyes of the heart because you see the other and they see you at the true level. They see the consciousness and the spirit that links both of you at the true level. And you can using those eyes, find the falseness, find the traumas, find the places where you're spinning things in the past or worrying about things in the future where you have unforgiveness. All those things are broken down and healed through the heart. The heart is the organ of discernment, it's the organ of healing, it's the organ of finding the truth in a relationship. And that's how you'll know, and you just said it. People say, well, how do I know if it's real? First of all, use your heart. The mind is, how do I know that it's real? This is all mindy things. I know it's real.
Yeah, so you're dealing with mental concepts at that point,
What you said is the heart knows. The heart knows it's real. It doesn't need. The heart says this is real. It doesn't even say it. It's just this is real. No, it knows. You feel at the heart level the truth of the relationship. you know that this becomes more greater than your individual existence at that level of relationship. You will give your individual temporal existence to help aid save the other. This is the bond of life. This becomes the bond of the heart. But to get there, you have to see true and see who has this resonance with you, and see that both sides have the truth. And if it's not, how do I know if it's real? You already know if you're saying, how do I know that it's real? You already should know that the heart isn't in it.
Yeah, you've answered your own question without realizing it.
Right. But they want to be, the mind will tell you, oh yeah, this is real, this is me. I know, we're all these things. The mind will spin all the stories around it to try and make it real, because the mind is a storyteller. The mind is all concerned with glamoury and making things look good and all the things we do with our minds. But when a relationship is built on falseness, no matter how much the mind puts on top of it, how many things it sticks on top, it will fall apart. It will not satisfy. It will not nourish. It will not have truth to it.
I think that the word mind has got to be better defined, because this is the thinking part of you. This is the reasoning part of you. But the mind is broader than that. When there is an aspect of the mind that connects itself up to consciousness, and that hasn't been defined. That's a different state for the mind itself. And I believe that, I wish I could remember the proverb in the Bible that, well, no, we have it actually online. But see, you were not given a spirit of fear.
Oh, that one is Timothy, 1 Timothy, yes.
Yes, thank you. But a spirit of power, a spirit of love, and a spirit of a sound mind. Now, usually the way it's written is, you were not given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind. But you need to understand what they're actually saying is the spirit of love and the spirit of a sound mind, which are different from the everyday, mundane aspects of those words.
Yes.
So when consciousness is integrated with your heart state, you get the spirit of love. When consciousness is integrated with your mind state, you get a sound mind. And that is who you actually are.
Interesting that, the first statement, we're not given a spirit of fear. There is no spirit of fear. Fear is a creation, a chimera of this kind of imagining what might be, holding on to offenses, imagining that something will do all these things. This breaks fear.
Yes, but there is a spirit of fear. Okay, but what it is a belief, a wrong belief.
Yes, the beliefs that I'm talking about are those chimeras. Those are things that you have to put into your mind. You have to judge. You have to believe. You have to infuse your life into a belief that something is going to happen, that something's bad, that something is fearful, that something. These are beliefs, exactly. That's a very good way of putting it.
Right, and you need to be able to acknowledge that that's where you're going.
Yes. It's
easy to convince yourself that, oh no, I'm not afraid, I'm just concerned. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Right.
It's fear, dear.
Yes.
That's all fear. It's still fear. Oh well, no, I'm concerned. I'm not really worried about it. I'm just concerned. It's like, no. It's still based in fear.
Well, and discernment, the eyes of the heart, will tell you that it's fear, even if the mind wants to tell you that it's not.
The ego wants to tell you that it's not.
The ego, those aspects of the I, the ego, as you say, that want to tear everything apart and worry and find fears and find concerns. I'm not afraid. I'm just concerned. I mean, that's a lovely mind statement.
Oh my gosh!
I, again, here's the wonderful exercise which we've done in the past, and I'll just do it again. Is when you find yourself talking to yourself about I. When you find yourself talking to yourself about I do this and I do that, you are tearing, you are operating in the ego realm at that point. The I is all about the ego realm. And then when all of your conversations start with I and I and I, you're conversing in the ego realm. Okay, so the I is a very important, let's say, flag, signpost that you're operating in the ego realm, and you're not necessarily in the heart. The heart doesn't talk about I.
No, it's true. The heart doesn't talk about I.
No. No, and it's not that you can't say the word, but it's a good, if you're trying to discern, if you're trying to kind of find and catch yourself and learn about the little voices that talk to yourself, well, just watch out for the eyes and just pause for just a femtosecond. Say, I, yeah.
Well, the truth of the matter is most people don't realize how often they use the pronoun I.
No.
It was an exercise we used to do for people to become aware of the fact that you use the pronoun I often.
Could you give the exercise now? Because I think this is a good thing. We're coming, the show is coming to, it's winding down. But I think that's a great exercise as a takeaway, because this is a good discernment tool. So.
Oh, well, the exercise was to become aware of how many times you want to say something and how often you use I. And the minute you speak, you are not allowed to use the pronoun I. Speak without using I. And I personally remember someone turning to me and was trying to initiate a question, but stopped. And then tried again and stopped. And then one more time, stopped. And it's like a shake of the head. And the question came up, can we use the pronoun me?
Me? And it's a great story, because this exercise, in the store, you used to do this exercise in these little meditation classes, and you would tell them that, here we're going to just do it for a few, right now for a few minutes,
No, they were given, you have to do this for the next couple of days.
Well,
see how you do.
But just in describing the exercise, people would try, we'd say, let's try that. And some people would sit there for minutes on end, almost with this sort of weird expression on their face, like, oh, and they're like, and they can't even say, I can't say anything, because they're like,
it's true.
Wait a minute,
I need help.
Every first word of my mouth is always I, and that it is illuminating to realize, and Tolle also has a similar type of exercise where he gets you into consciousness, because he says, just let those ego things, just let them drain away, and just be. In the being state, there is no I.
It's true. You're just amming.
You're just amming. And in the relationship state, one thing you can do through when you're having trouble with your eyes, not the eyes you see with, but the eyes that you speak of, think of the other and start your sentence with, you're such a lovely person. I really appreciate you, although there's an I. See, begin with thinking about the other and putting the other into your conversation. And you'll find that it's a little easier not to talk about yourself all the time, because I is talking about you. Well, this, enough of me going on about me. What do you think about me? It's funny, but it also breaks us into these tiny little I egos that talk to each other when there's no one else to talk to. Why do you think you lie awake at night staring at the ceiling talking to yourself? Because your eyes all want to talk to each other, and they've got no one else to talk to. They're going to talk to each other.
It's true. They'll be at each other, keeping you awake.
And they'll keep you awake, and they won't let you be.
Mm-hmm.
They won't let you be. That's a wonderful phrase. They won't let me be, because the eyes want to always be first. They want to be in the primary position. They want everyone to be concerned about them, and they take a lot of energy. Eyes take a lot of energy. Before we wind down a little bit, but we're up on the website soon. There's a lovely quote, and I'm just going to read it because it's a good one. It's by Thomas Merton, who was, I believe, an English philosopher, and the phrase is: "If a man is to live, or if a person is to live, he must be all alive. Body, soul, mind, heart, spirit." It isn't exactly what we were talking about. We would make that less. We would just say, body, soul, and spirit. But the aspects of soul, which are the mind and the heart, and other parts as well, but the mind and the heart are both part of soul. The heart is more true, the mind is more easily fooled, but they're both parts of your soul. And the body is where it resides, but spirit is the foundation. It's last, but it's also first. It's in the primary position. Your consciousness is in spirit. It is eternal. It is always there. It is what makes the rest of it all possible. Getting in touch with your consciousness is the goal of relationship. It's the goal of living here. It's informing consciousness, informing being through experience. So develop it. Go with it. Get away from the eyes. Use the heart. Discern and have relationships. And you will find your spirit connection will grow.
You are loved. Let go of the fear. And we have reached the end of our show. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael. And thank you for listening.